Hello, everyone. Good afternoon. With great pleasure, do we host today a webinar to highlight the peer-reviewed medical research program. That's a program from the Congressionally Directed Medical Research Program from the Department of Defense. And we have with us today Dr. Cecilia Dupecher, who is the manager and key administrator of this program. So without further ado, I want to hand it over to Cecilia.
All right. So hi, everyone. Good afternoon. It's a pleasure to be here today. I am Cecilia Dupecher. I am the program manager of the peer-reviewed medical research program. It is one of 35 programs under this organization, Congressionally Directed Medical Research Programs. And I'm excited to be here this afternoon to talk to you about all our funding opportunities that we have available. Next slide, please. So this is the outline of our presentation today. I'm going to give you a brief overview of the organization. For those of you that are not familiar with it, I'm going to talk about the program cycle, the milestones that we have to go through to execute the program and our peer review process and programmatic review process. We're going to talk about the peer-reviewed medical research program. That's specifically one of the programs, the program that I manage, the one that has the funding opportunities for myotonic dystrophy. And then I'm going to talk about the available funding opportunities, the application process, and we're going to close off with some tips for a successful application. Next slide, please. So this is the vision and mission of our organization. We are transforming healthcare through innovative and impactful research. Innovative and impactful are two words that you're going to hear throughout this presentation. This is really how we say that we like to differentiate ourselves from other funding organizations. And we do this by responsibly managing collaborative research that discovers, develops, and delivers healthcare solutions for service members, their families, veterans, and the American public. And this last sentence is important. This really encompasses military health, which is what we are tasked on executing. So it's not just active duty service members, but also beneficiaries as well. Next slide, please. So here are just a couple of hallmarks of the organization. I'm going to go through them in broad strokes. I'm not going to go through each of them individually. But one thing I think that's important for you to understand about CDMRP is that we manage targeted research funds that are added by Congress to the DoD budget. This means that unlike the NIH, for instance, we do not request these funds. These are just added as congressional special interest dollars. We integrate consumers as full participants throughout the program processes, meaning our peer review, our programmatic review, and many of our other processes. And by consumers, we mean individuals living with the disease and the condition. And this is very important because CDMRP is grounded in the roots of grassroots advocacy, and we make sure to include consumers in everything that we do. Next slide. So we publicly announce and compete funding opportunities. These are not earmarked dollars, right? We compete them. Even though it is congressional special interest, we have to go through a peer review and a programmatic review process for these. And what's important here for those of you that are on the line to understand is, unlike the NIH, we do not tailor. We do not work with a performer to tailor the proposals before submission. So this is really, we try to avoid giving a competitive advantage to an individual applicant. So this is very important for you to know. Once we have our funding opportunities out, it's something that we really try to minimize. And we like to say that we fund impactful and innovative research for specific programs added by Congress to the Defense Appropriation Bill. This means that, again, we are here to take risks. We are comfortable taking risks that other funding organizations do not venture to fund. And we're really looking for that impactful, innovative research that's going to change the lives of those living with the disease and the condition. Next slide. So this is a list of our appropriation. This are the 35 programs now in FY24 congressional language. You can see there the one program that's highlighted, that is peer-reviewed medical. That is the program that I manage. It has 42 topic areas. So aside from the ones that you see there, and I like putting this list up because you might be researchers that have areas of overlapping with some of these other programs. So all of them are standalone programs. They have their own funding opportunities. You're not going to find a funding opportunity that's applicable for whole of the organization. This is just for each one of these programs, they're going to put out their funding opportunities. Like I said, today we're talking about the program that's highlighted there, different than these other programs. It has a broader congressional language, but it does list congressionally directed topic areas that we're going to be talking about. Next slide. So this is our program cycle and the review process. The next few slides, I'm going to go over the strategies and the milestones that we use to execute this program yearly. Next slide. So you can see here, this is a diagram that goes over all the milestones for execution of the funds that we receive. The first thing that's important for you to note is that our funding opportunities, they can only be released after we receive an appropriation. This means this year we were under a continuing resolution for several months. We couldn't release our funding opportunities. This is why this year it's a little bit late. It came at the end of March. All of the programs of CDMRP are going to go through a two-step pre-application process. So you're going to have to submit a pre-application that's going to be either a pre-proposal or a letter of intent. We're going to go through this in later slides, but it's going to be a two-step. You first submit that, and then a few weeks later, you will be asked to submit your full proposal. Then we're going to go through peer review and programmatic review. And ultimately, the commanding general is the decision authority for all our funded proposals. And that's when we start when we have the recommended for funding list, we start the award negotiation process with our team of science officers, and they will monitor the award all the way until the end of the period of performance. There are two things that I would like to note on this slide. The first one, you can see there the programmatic panel, the circle on the left in brown. This is a board of advisors, if you will, individuals that are part of the core members of the program, and they will provide their input. They will provide guidance, overview, subject matter expertise throughout many of the milestones, and they do include consumers in the programmatic panel. So we are very transparent. Each program that you saw on that list has their own set of board members, of programmatic panel members. And I encourage you to go to our website to see who these individuals are for this program, because ultimately they will be also giving recommendations for funding. They will be the ones providing their input once we get there. The other thing that I would like for you to note on this slide, you can see the bottom arrow there. It takes several months for us to go through these milestones. So even though we have some deadlines that are fast approaching, it's going to take months for us to go through the pre-proposal process, then peer review and programmatic review. So ultimately, you're going to know about your funding notifications by the end of the year. And after that, we still would have to do award negotiations. So keep that in mind as a buffer when you are submitting a proposal to us. It's going to take a few months, around a year, for you to start to receive your funds if you are selected for funding. Next slide. So like I mentioned, all of our proposals, all of our programs here at CDMRP, they go through a two-tier review process. This is a process that was advised to us by the Institute of Medicine when the organization stood up. Starts off with peer review. Unlike the NIH, we do not have a Center for Scientific Review. We do not have standing panels, so we will solicit and recruit reviewers based on the expertise needed for that year. And then the outcome of the peer review is going to be, as we all know here in this room, we're all familiar with the process, going to be a document that lists the strengths and weaknesses of the proposal. That's a summary statement. It's going to give you a numerical score, how well your proposal scored. The ones that have the high scientific merit are the proposals that are going to end up going to programmatic review. Here, programmatic review, like I mentioned, we have the list of individuals, part of the programmatic panel listed on our website. They will be looking now comparatively at the pool of outstanding proposals that we have, and looking at adherence to the intent of the program relevance and the potential for impact. So what's important for us to note here is that we do not have a pay line, so it's not going to be the ones that scored the highest that are ultimately going to be recommended for funding. Like I said, we have a different set of individuals that will be looking comparatively at this, and we're not just based solely on scientific merit, but also how it balances out with the pool of proposals that we received that year, and where the program is leaning towards, and where the program is the impact for near term for the program. Next slide, please. As I mentioned, so consumers, defined as individuals living with the disease and the conditions, they are the true north of this organization. They are the foundation on which we stand on. This started because of grassroots effort that of breast cancer advocates that went to the Hill to bat for more research funds. So we really include and we have a tremendous partnership with advocacy groups and that nominate consumers to be part of our panel. And their input is very important to us. And I highlight this because there are going to be several attachments in a proposal that needs to be submitted to CDMRP that is going to highlight that it's also going to be reviewed by a consumer reviewer. And we're going to ask you to state all the important topics that you're going to need to address in those attachments in lay language. So keep in mind that the consumer reviewer is also going to have an equal vote as the scientist reviewer for the PRMRP proposals and CDMRP proposals in general. Next slide. So now I'm going to get into the peer-reviewed medical research program. It's the program that has 42 topic areas that we're going to specifically has myotonic dystrophy listed in the congressional language. Next slide. So this program started in 1999, a few years after the organization was stood up, which was in 1992. And like I mentioned earlier, different than other programs in the organization, our congressional directive is much broader. It states simply that we have to fund research of clear scientific merit and direct relevance to military health in specified topic areas. So next slide, please. So each year with the appropriation, we will receive a list of congressionally mandated topic areas that are eligible for funding that year. It's important for you to note that CDMRP does not have any say on the language that comes in these topic areas. This is really a result of congressional intent and advocacy groups and lobbying groups that go to the Hill to bat for these topics to end up under PRM. You will see there in blue, we have 4 new topic areas listed this year. We have a total of 42 topic areas, and myotonic dystrophy is listed also in congressional language. So next slide. So this program takes a portfolio-driven approach. We allocate topic areas of similar fields into the same bucket. So these are areas of, these are buckets, portfolios that align with the major area of research. We have a rare diseases portfolio. This was new since last year, so this is important for this group. Here are the topic areas that are eligible for funding under this rare diseases and condition portfolio. Next slide, please. So the good thing about this portfolio-driven approach is that we can set priorities at the portfolio level. Each one of these portfolios are going to have their own set of strategic goals, which is what we are aiming to achieve, what we're looking for, how we are soliciting and prioritizing the research that's needed for each one of these portfolios. The goals are going to be displayed across the continuum of care. You're going to see, so we're going to have goals for foundational prevention, diagnosis, treatment, and epidemiology. And by law, the applications must address one topic area and one strategic goal to be eligible for funding. One thing that's important for to highlight, I think this group would be interested in knowing that these strategic goals, they are devised in coordination with key stakeholders. So we do talk to advocacy groups, we talk to major partners to make sure that we are soliciting for the research that's needed in this field. Next slide. So for all of these portfolios, I'm going to get in a little bit more detail and a further slide about our award mechanisms, but here's just to introduce the idea that for all these portfolios, we have award mechanisms that are going to be available for all these portfolios and all these topic areas. So we're going to have 2 award mechanisms available under basic research, 2 under translational, and 2 for clinical trials and clinical research. Next slide. One of the things that I think a lot of you are familiar with, because this is the same as we have done last year, is that, as I mentioned, we're going to have our strategic goals displayed across the continuum of care, but this is an application requirement. You are going to have to choose a topic area once you go in and you're starting to prepare your submission to us. You will have to choose a portfolio. So it's going to be the rare diseases and conditions portfolio. You're going to have to choose a topic area, and you're going to have to choose a strategic goal. Okay, you can see that the goals listed here, this is exactly, it's the same as we have in our funding opportunities. It really spans from bench to bedside. You will find these goals are broad. They're broad for a reason. They can be used in a way that you have to mix and match. For, let's say, if somebody here is also applying for hydrocephalus, they could go in and choose a goal that aligns with that. This is the goals that were set forth, like I said, for the rare diseases and conditions portfolio. There will be goals that will be applicable to all of our funding opportunities. So if you go to the next slide, you will see their goals under treatment and epidemiology. And like I said, this is a compilation of prioritized needs from many stakeholders for many of these topic areas that are here, including the advocacy groups that participate in these meetings. So just the take-home message here is you will have to choose one topic area and one strategic goal to be eligible for funding under these funding opportunities. Next slide. Another requirement for our proposal submission. So like I said, we align under the DoD. The relevance to military health is something that is also reviewed in our proposals. You will see there that we give some examples of what military relevance really means. It's not just there are going to be some topic areas, some programs that are going to be directly aligned with active duty service members, but there's also some of those that align much more with beneficiaries. I will say this is a place for you to really reach out to your advocacy group. You will be asked to fill an attachment to describe the relevance to military health. And I encourage you to reach out to the advocacy groups. They are the ones that lobby for the funds to be under the DoD. They have quite robust explanations and comprehensive ways of really nailing that part of the proposal. Next slide, please. So here are the 6 funding opportunities, the same one that we had listed on a previous slide. I'm just going to go over them here in a little bit more detail. So under basic research, we have the Discovery Award. This award has a direct cost limit of $275K. It is a smaller award. Everybody's eligible to apply for this, but what we're looking here is for that innovative breakthrough idea, that change in paradigm. It is a high risk, high reward. We are okay taking the high risk of this proposal. We're okay if 95% of them fail, but we're looking for that really crazy idea that will ultimately lead to a major breakthrough. Then we move on to the investigator-initiated award. This is a $1 million in direct cost. It is still under basic research, so it should still be aligned under basic research. This is a change from previous year. Before, we would fund the entire pipeline under this award mechanism. Not any longer. We're looking here for preclinical expansion, cell lines, animal work, comparative studies, validation studies to validate preliminary or already published data. The direct cost limit here is $1 million. Then we move on to our translational. These are going to be a little bit more advanced award mechanisms, starting off with the Impact Award. This is a brand new award mechanism this year. The direct cost limit is $2 million or 2.6 if you come in with a partner and with a clinician partner. And here we are looking for more mature research. It is that use-inspired type of science, something that has you will be asked to clearly articulate the potential for near-term clinical impact for patients for this award. Then we move on to the Technology Therapeutic Development Award. This is a TTDA. Direct cost limit here is $4 million. This is a product-driven award mechanism for IND-enabling studies, toxicology studies, GMP production. There's really a wide variety of things that can be funded under this award, but the focus here is a product-driven award mechanism that will ultimately lead to an IND or IDE submission by the end of the period of performance, which is 4 years. Closing off, we have our clinical trials and clinical research. This is the first one here is the Lifestyle Behavioral Health Intervention Research Award. This is an award mechanism that was new last year. We're looking here for anything that's done with clinical research that's not FDA regulated. Like apps, non-invasive devices, patient outcomes, or quality of life. And then we move on to our clinical trial award. and this is the classical interventional clinical trials. We do not have a direct cost limit. We like the researcher to come in and propose the budget that he thinks really is necessary to carry out that clinical trial. We have two options under this award mechanism. If you open our funding opportunities, you will see that there's going to be a clinical trial with planning phase. We commit to giving you $500K for a period of a year for you to finalize your regulatory approvals needed to begin the trial. And then the trial would be funded, assuming you would meet all the milestones set forth during negotiation. And that year would be executed as an option. Alternatively, you can come in with a full clinical trial if you're ready to start. So an IND or an ID for the intervention that is going to be analyzed is already needed by the beginning of the trial. Now, one thing that's important here, you will see there at the bottom, there's an arrow that says letter of intent. And then for the clinical trial, there's going to be this square that is highlighting the pre-application, pre-proposal. So like I mentioned before, when you submit a proposal to PRMRP, it's going to be a two-step submission process. You're going to submit a pre-application or a letter of intent, okay? So for these 5 mechanisms that you see there, we're just going to request a letter of intent. This is for the basic research, translational, and the lifestyle behavioral health intervention. And the letter of intent is really what the name specifies. It's going to be a 1-page document that you're going to submit and tell us, I'm planning on submitting this impact award, and this is what we're going to do. This is an administrative step only. You will not receive feedback, and it's not a funnel, meaning that it's a step that you have to be invited to submit. No, it is just, like I mentioned, an administrative step, but it is not optional. So if you end up forgetting to submit a letter of intent, you will not be able to submit a full proposal. And we do this because, as I mentioned, we do not have standing panels. So we really do need to start receiving in advance, before we receive the full proposal, the interest, the expertise that we're going to need to solicit to start putting together the panels that are ultimately going to review your full submissions when you do that. For the clinical trial, it's a different process. We're going to request a pre-proposal. That means that it's going to be a 5-page document that we will review it. It will be peer-reviewed and will ultimately result in an invitation or a non-invite for you to submit your clinical trial. The clinical trial award is a very elaborate application process. We do not want a researcher to spend time putting together so many documents and so many attachments for something that ultimately there might not be an interest, right? So we do offer this pre-proposal process so we can filter down to the ones that really we have the highest chance of getting funded in the end. Next slide. So here's just a snapshot, a screenshot of our funding opportunity. What you see there is the clinical trial award for peer review this year. You will see in the front page, there's going to be a submission and review dates and times. That square there in red at the bottom of the left side of the page. It's going to give you the dates of your submission, when it's the pre-application is due, when you're going to receive your invitation to submit. This is, again, just a clinical trial, and the peer review and programmatic review dates. The other thing that I recommend you taking a look at here on the right side of the screen, there's going to be there the award information. This is going to list, as soon as you open our funding opportunities, it's going to list the background information, the program, but it's really going to dig in what is the purpose, what is the intent of the award mechanism. And this is where, like I mentioned, we don't really work with performers to find where their research best fits. This is where you're going to find the information needed for you to make that determination to which funding opportunity is going to be more successful for you to submit to. And then at the bottom, you will see there the criteria. That's another item that I think is important for us to discuss. So all our applications are going to go, like I said, through peer review and programmatic review. And we list the peer review and programmatic review criteria, how you are going to be evaluated. I have, if you move on to the next slide, there's a screenshot. So each of these funding opportunities, they're going to have different sets of peer review criteria. So for instance, for a discovery award, we're looking mostly at innovation. for an investigator-initiated award, it's going to be mostly research strategy and feasibility. So each one of them, they're going to list the peer review criteria in descending order, in decreasing order of importance. And then there's going to be bullets under each one of these headers of how it is that you're going to be evaluated. That's an example. To what extent does the proposed research project impact a critical problem? So, and that's going to be, there are going to be several pages really going through that. I recommend, what we really recommend for researchers to do at this phase is once they put together their proposal, send it to a colleague and see if you're hitting the mark on all of these, right? Because like I said, this is the same document that the reviewers are going to be looking at when they are scoring your proposal. So make sure that you're hitting all of them and understanding that it's going to be quite different from one award mechanism to another. Sometimes repackaging a proposal that you have previously submitted to the NIH is not going to work well with these review criteria. So we really do encourage you to spend a lot of time looking at this. Next slide. Like I said, we have a two-tier review process. Then we go through programmatic review. The programmatic review, the criteria is also listed on our funding opportunities. Here's a screenshot. And again, just as a reminder, I encourage you to go to our website and take a look at the programmatic panel, the individuals that will ultimately be making the funding recommendations, so you can see the audience that will be making that determination and tailor your proposal accordingly. Next slide. So here's just a summary of the dates and deadlines. I apologize for the dates and deadlines of our submission. You will see there, like I said, the 5 award mechanisms, they require an LOI, a letter of intent, so no pre-proposal. You will not receive an invitation to submit or not. This is, like I said, just an administrative step. And it is due for the basic award mechanisms May 6th, and then for the other ones, May 13th. Okay, this is just the letter of intent. It's a one-page paragraph. And then the full proposal will be due May 23rd for the basic ones, and then June 6th for the translational award mechanisms. And also for the Libera lifestyle and behavioral health intervention. Now, for the clinical trial, we do require a pre-proposal. The date for the pre-proposal is going to be May 13th. You will, by June 17th, know if you are invited to submit a full proposal, and then that one would be due August 19th. Next slide. So this is, again, just an overview. I think that this is helpful to investigators, just a diagram of this 2-step submission process. What I want to highlight here, you can see there in step 2, step 3, there is going to be a BO. Your business official is going to have to submit several forms and do several clicks on eBRAP or grants.gov. So this is something that I encourage you to leave a buffer. So your business official, it's going to be a participation of not just yourself, but also the business office. Next slide. So now I'm going to close off with some tips, resources, and strategies for a successful application submission. Next slide. So if I leave you with one idea from today is to read the announcements carefully, right? The DoD funding opportunities, we fully recognize they are long, they are lengthy. They are long and lengthy for a reason. Like I said, we are not going to communicate where we can't provide a competitive advantage to a performer. So really, everything that you need for a successful submission is listed there. That document goes through several levels of review and ethics and legal. So everything that you need is there. I encourage you to really take a look, again, like we mentioned, the strategic goals. That's going to list the focus areas, the topics, where you see that we see the direction of the program, what type of research we are soliciting. Take a look at all the required elements, eligibility and funding, and the review criteria, and also deadlines. And we'll talk about deadlines in a further slide. Next slide, please. Like I mentioned, I think from how we differ from other funding organizations is really the weight that we put on impact and innovation. So I would really make sure that your statements do come across, anything that you submit to us how will this work make a difference? Keeping in mind the audience that's going to be reviewing it and the fact that we have patients living with the disease and the condition also part of the programmatic panel. So sometimes repackaging, or like I mentioned before, repackaging a proposal that was submitted to another funding organization is not really a successful way of resubmitting it to CDMRP, because we are looking at other criteria. Next slide, please. This is a big one. I really like to emphasize this. I think absent any disasters of nature, a hurricane, an earthquake, the DoD does not provide an extension. So I know that many funding organizations provide a grace period after the deadlines come. But what I showed you on that table in a previous slide, that is really the drop dead deadline. We do not provide a grace period. So keep that in mind. I think every year I receive outstanding proposals a minute late, or appeals. Can you please accept this? I found I had issues with the IT, and we really, the program office, we cannot bypass this. This is part of our acquisition shops, what they are determined to do, and we really cannot provide a grace period. So do keep that in mind when you're putting together your proposal and leaving yourself enough buffer room. And ultimately, grantsmanship, right? I think knowing what the intent of the award mechanism is, the people that are going to be reviewing, that is very important in the way that you redraft your proposal, the way that you work your proposal. Speak with clarity and unburdened by jargon, keeping in mind that, like I said, you are going to have consumers reviewing this as well. Next slide. This is just a screenshot of the landing page of the program webpage. You will find a wealth of information there. You can find previous year's topic areas. You can find this year's topic areas. You're going to see our strategic plan, our program book that lists all the portfolios. So I encourage you to go and take a look at it if you're thinking of applying to us. Next slide. Here is the landing page of CDMRP website. There is going to be a little mail icon at the bottom. You can subscribe to listserv. You can choose. There's going to be a drop-down box menu. If you are interested in any of the other programs that I showed at the beginning of this presentation, you can sign up. You can click on that box, and you will start receiving newsletter and funding notifications for any program that you choose on the organization here. Next slide. We also have a list of webinars posted on our website. These are not specific to PRM like the one that I am providing right now. They're going to be talking about like high risk, high gain funding opportunities. It's just a more generalized concept, but I'm sure that if you look at them, you're going to find nuggets of information that are going to be very useful for whatever funding opportunity that you decide to apply this year. Next slide. And I will pause here, and I am happy to take questions.
Cecilia, there's one question that I didn't answer. Does imaging and/or biofluid biomarkers fall into the lifestyle behavioral health intervention?
If it's not an intervention per se, if you're not looking at, because we have our own definition of clinical trial, which is clearly posted in the funding opportunity, then I would say yes. But if it is an intervention, because it depends on how, with this limited information that I have, I apologize. With the limited information that I have, I would say, as long as it is not a classical intervention, it doesn't fall under our clinical trial, then that's correct.
Great. So I have a question from that was directly submitted to us. So the attendee writes, I belong to the research institute accredited by the Spanish Ministry of Science. Would I be eligible to submit a research project?
So can you repeat that, Andy? Are you saying if it's an international performer? Absolutely.
Exactly, yes.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody is eligible for funding, not just United States. Yes.
So similar question, right? Will application from PIs outside of the United States be considered for funding? And the answer is yes.
Yep.
So you just had another one come in. Would you look at the criteria of early stage investigators like the NIH?
Can you elaborate on that question? Whoever asked that question, meaning if early investigators are eligible, but for the Discovery Award.
We'll see if
Does
they
that
respond.
answer the question?
All right, we have one more that came in. If you're using an intervention like exercise that is not FDA regulated, I assume I would apply for the behavioral opportunity.
Yes.
Well, if there aren't any more questions, maybe Cecilia, do you have any closing?
I am just excited to receive. I see that there's one question here. I don't know if that's new or not. So an early investigator can only apply to the Discovery Grant. It depends on what you're defining as early investigator. I will say that for the other award mechanisms, maybe you could be eligible also for the investigator-initiated award, but for the translational and clinical, it's going to be assistant professor and above. You're
Great.
welcome. Okay.
Well, if there aren't any more questions, Cecilia, thank you, and Jenny, thank you so much for taking the time today, right, and walking the community or attendees through the process, and hopefully you will receive strong applications.
Yes, I'm looking forward to a very productive FY24 for this group.
Well, with this, let's if there aren't any more questions, let's end it here, right? Good luck to all the applicants, and yeah, thank you again.
All right. Thank you, Andy. Thank you, everyone. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.